are CCW permits and the fact that the state oversees that a good idea or a bad idea? I want you to think about this. Now here I want to give you the breaking news. The breaking news is that you heard Margaret go on for about 20 minutes, and I can tell you right now, she didn't believe a word she said. This is always fun, right, Margaret?
I love it because you know what? I want you to see what happened to a lot of you in here. And don't tell me it didn't happen because I know it did. As that argument was going, I know a lot of you started going, well, you know what? That sounds pretty good. That sounds good. That sounds good. We had one flip right here on the stage. Where is he? Right? Okay, here's what's going to happen to you, and this is what we see happening as we go across and we teach people this. That side is going to hit you with all that emotion and pull in all these ideas. This lady, what was your name again? Lindsay. Lindsay said what she said, and someone down here said, yeah, they kind of agreed with that. That was, right? So you get that emotion going, and then we've got all these different side comments. You got to stay firm on your foundation of what you think and what you believe. I mean, would you agree, Shane?
Absolutely, yeah. And it goes back to what we talked about yesterday, Taming the Beast of Washington, bringing the discussion back to the foundation. Some of you did that well. Others were sucked in by the emotion of the argument. Being able to discuss the foundation allows you in so many ways to control the discussion, to control the debate. Because again, if we allow the opponent to do something different than that, it becomes that yelling match that we want to avoid because it's just the person who yells the loudest and who throws out the most emotionally appealing facts. Now on the CCW permit, is there anyone here that believes CCW permits are a good idea? That the state should oversee the idea of CCW permits and that an individual should have to go through training if they're going to carry a weapon?
Shane?
Yes. Do you believe this?
Yes.
Okay, would you just come stand right up here? So let me just be clear here. Come over here in the light so we can see you. And you are?
Roger.
Roger from?
Georgia.
Georgia. So you believe that the state should be overseeing the issuance of the CCW, and it's a good idea?
Yes.
Okay, and tell us why.
Because I think the right to have and bear arms is something that we have inherent, and I want no licensing for home use. But I think if you're going to go out into the community and carry a weapon, I think it is reasonable to have some kind of regulation on you doing that.
So if I'm going to go out and carry in public, I should have to get a permit issued by the government?
Yes.
Anybody disagree? Anybody willing to come up and talk about this?
Sure, why not?
Way back in the back standing, yes.
She's sending her up? Okay, get up there.
Yeah, Margaret, would you get one more?
She might have spoken. All right, all right.
So you disagree, and you are?
Sherry from California.
Man, I cannot wait to go to California. This is going to be so awesome. You people are on fire.
Yeah, they just sent me up, so I don't know.
Wow, you called an army up. So, hold on. He's by himself. What did you do? You're railroading him. There's some. So tell us, why? Why do you disagree?
Oh, thanks. The purpose of me coming to this seminar in the first place is that I am sick and to death of government being in my business. Now, when it talks to the when we talk about the right to bear arms, it's a very scary society for me as a female out there. There are times I have to get in the car and drive to Vegas. There are times that I get in the car to go visit people in Phoenix. I want a gun by my side because I'm not worried about all these wonderful people here. I'm worried about the thugs. And the only regulations that we have they don't protect me. Sorry, Miss Police Officer. I have got family that are peace officers. They suggest that we carry guns. If there's one thing I would just love to see is the government to get out of our business. And that's how I feel.
How would you all respond?
Well, in Tennessee, you go to it can be held by private enterprise, but you get a concealed carry permit. And when you get one, they check out your background, they fingerprint you, and you get extensive a background check. So what it does for our state is, for example, we have this police officer up here. Our police officers are putting their life on the line for us every day, every time they put on that badge. And when they pull you over and you've got that concealed carry permit, they know that you're a good guy. So it protects the police officers.
Go ahead.
But if you could...
You see her? Give me that microphone.
Sorry, just 1 second. If the peace officers could guarantee me that they could take these horrible weapons out of the hands of the thugs and the criminals, I'll put my gun down. And until that day, my gun stays with me. I know there are laws where I'm not supposed to be carrying a gun. I'm carrying a gun. I'm breaking the law because I've got to protect myself because there's not enough Lindsays in this world. I'm a female driving by myself and scared to death in Los Angeles, for God's sakes.
You could keep your gun, just be identified as a good person.
I can't identify to the police officers because I can't carry a gun
Yeah, but
in
the
California.
police officer needs to know
So
when
hold
they're
on.
pulling somebody over, is this a good person or a bad person?
Shane,
But I'm a law-abiding citizen.
Go ahead.
can I jump in?
Yeah, that's one of you. Let's hear this.
I'd like to back up just a little bit. We're inside the muck. We're arguing over this situation, that situation. We've got to, like you said, we got to back up to the principle. Here's the problem. If any one of us was the regulator of our firearms rules, I would probably not have a problem with it. What happens when, let's say, I don't know, Barack Obama becomes president? Once you start regulating and saying the government the government can regulate you only in this area or only in this area. Well, then when you get the wrong person in, he says, well, you let me regulate it there, so I'm going to go a little farther. I'm going to go a little farther. I'm going to go a little farther. And what's happened is 50 years ago, 50, 60, 70% of the kids had guns in the home. They saw a gun every day. It wasn't an anomaly. They knew what it was. They shot a rabbit and they saw it guts blowed out all over the road. They said, okay, I'm not going to shoot anybody because that's bad. Well, nobody sees it anymore except on your little video games, and there's no consequences.
No, that's very well said. Very well said. I mean, what about this idea that the philosophy of government, that everyone is endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and one of those things is the right to defend oneself? And what about the idea that the purpose of government is to secure the rights of the people? Why is it that you're suggesting to us that in order to exercise something that is inherent in every human being, I must go to the government to get a permission slip to exercise that fundamental right?
You could get the private enterprise to
A little closer.
You could get the private enterprise to do the testing for, and that's what we do in Tennessee.
I understand, but is government, you're saying private enterprise may do this, but you're saying it's going to be overseen by the government, correct?
Yeah, we just want our police officers to be able to know who the good people are and who the bad people are. How do you
Excuse
want
me.
to have all these different people coming in and they're
finish.
felons and you don't know if you're pulling over a felon or what you're pulling over. If they've got that concealed carry permit, you know you're talking to a good person.
Okay.
So you
Just
can kind of
relax.
relax a little bit.
Let's back up. Let's
Hold
back
on,
up the train.
One second, I'm coming to you. Hey, your name is from Tennessee. Welcome to the lynch
Wait.
mob.
Excuse me. The one thing.
Hold on, just
Wait.
relax.
Okay.
Okay, and this is
Tom from Indiana.
from Indiana. Hold on, do you see these ladies over there? They're like,
I'm second in line.
I know, I'm sorry, we're coming to you.
I'll be
Go.
brief. I'll be brief. Many years ago, people worried about safe driving. There was a big focus on mothers against drunk driving. Incidents of all that problems went down. There was a number of things, that went involved in decreasing that area that was killing our youth. And I look back now, I've carried since I was 18 years old because we can in our state. You have to be 21 to buy a gun, be 18 years old to get a permit. And one of the things I noticed, I grew up in kind of a rural area, and people were familiar with things. It's a little different, obviously, now. But what we got to look at is, number one, can't take the rights. So much money is spent fighting for inalienable rights to begin with. If we had a fraction of that, we were worried about youth driving, so they have it in high school. So kids are better drivers. People almost view driving as a right, although it's not. It's a privilege. So if we had any emphasis at all on gun knowledge and education, what the lady was talking about earlier, people need to know what, need to be trained. That's not a regulation, that's an education. We need to educate people early on because pregnancy is an issue, unwed parents are an issue. We need to educate them on because the reactive approach, which would be government or something along those, varies. It's just like what he's saying, whoever's in power. So we can't tamper with that. But we can affect change through education.
So let me ask you about the education component. Would you advocate government overseeing the educational program?
No.
No.
Your individual school district.
Yeah, we're going to need to do that. We're going to need the ownership in that. But you know what? They didn't regulate MAD either, and they're very effective.
Very good. Yes.
And this is the reason I have the stance I have. You
Have
said,
you stand a little bit more of an
Okay.
angle, all three of you, so
Okay.
they can see you.
you said that if we killed somebody in our own home, defending our home, it was going to cost us $50,000 to defend ourselves. Now, my idea about the concealed carry, how about if I was out in the street? How much is that going to cost me to defend myself? I don't understand why the heck, when I kill somebody in my home who's invading my home, it's going to cost me $50,000. The only reason I believe that permit to carry is important is it gives me additional legal protection. Because look what happens to you in your own home.
So let me address that. Number one, I don't want to give the false impression that every time you use a gun in self-defense, it's going to cost you $50,000. All I'm suggesting is you need to think about potential consequences. And one of the things that we talk about in this impact class that I teach back in Arizona is I ask the question, over what are you willing to kill? Are you willing to kill over your wallet?
No.
Are you willing to kill over your car being stolen?
No.
Are you willing to kill over somebody breaking into your home? Maybe.
Maybe.
Right? Maybe. Who are you willing to kill? Are you willing to step in and defend somebody you don't know? Are you willing to step in and defend a young child?
Yes.
Are you willing to step in and defend a family member? See, these are things that you need to think about. My chief tactical instructor back in Arizona, Justin Henry, is amazing. He served 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan, is a Purple Heart, and just amazing. And he will tell you that unless I know what's going on, I will not intervene on behalf of somebody I don't know. That's a personal decision he's made. And all I'm suggesting is you need to make those decisions. Those what-ifs must come into play before you're involved in the scenario. So you're suggesting, I just want to be clear on that it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily mean that it's going to necessarily cost you that. I'm just saying understand and prepare that it could.
Okay. Unfortunately, I was originally from Illinois and Chicago. As a licensed physician, I could give narcotics, but I could not have a permit to have a gun because I wasn't trustworthy enough. I could give narcotics, but I couldn't have a gun. Now, in Illinois, when people break into someone's house, and this is just terrible, if you wound the person, that person has recourse, and we had people have their homes taken away because they wound the robber. So the statement was, if you're going to shoot him, make sure he's dead. Now, that turns everything on its head. And here we are, and this is an inalienable right, but it isn't. And so the only reason I said that the consent to carry was something that was reasonable, because at least it gives you something else. Well, I've gone through this, and this is what happened. But in your own home, if you kill somebody, I mean, you may, as the individual that was talked about earlier, you may be in more trouble.
Okay. And obviously, a lot of this pertains to the state where you come from. I mean, I think many of you would love the state I come from, Arizona. There is no requirement for a CCW permit. Anybody Anybody can carry a firearm, open or concealed. And people walk around with firearms everywhere and they're not out killing each other. Okay? I'm very much a staunch advocate of not needing a permit to exercise a fundamental right. But nevertheless, let's have the debate. Let's talk about it because there's people out there. You've got them here, right? And so we need to discuss these things.
In
Let's go back
California,
here. Yes.
in California, we just passed a law that you cannot carry a weapon visibly. However, to get a concealed carry, you have to come up with a good excuse. I carry the cash box from the wine tastings to the bank. I work in a convenience store. Myself, I'm having trouble getting a good reason to get a concealed carry license. However, I also kind of look at it and go, do I really want that concealed carry license? Because there's a website for next door, Redwood City. And about a month ago, all the names of the people who just come up with their gotten their concealed weapons license showed up on the website. The guy down the street from me has his weapon. One of the reasons you want to carry a concealed weapon is so nobody knows. So now everybody knows that Mr. Driscoll, that lives on the corner of Woodside Road and Kings Mountain Road, has a concealed carry license. That is government abusing what they got. They're abusing the information. So if they can publish it so every Tom, Dick, and Harry, robber, etc., has that information, they have now violated the rights of the concealed carry people. On top of that, where is it going? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I agree with the training. I think training is good. But once again, if it's regulated, they have my name. I want to go out and get that training myself. I want to be anonymous. I don't want people knowing who has the gun and who to shoot.
So, yeah, what about this idea that...
as a terrorist, too. I am a terrorist. There's only a matter...
You are?
Yes, I am. It's only a matter of time before they outlaw terrorists. I mean, I am a Christian. I am pro-life. I have 4 members of my family who've been in the military. I have a target on my back for Janet Napolitano. So it's only a matter of time before terrorists can't carry guns.
So let's ask the question here. With our CCW permit, you're suggesting that if a person wants to open carry, okay, but now once I do this, place the jacket over the top, there's now a need for the permit. You're saying you need a permit, period, to carry out in the open. Is that your position? To carry at all, concealed or unconcealed?
Well, I believe it's in the state's decision to do it, the people of the state to choose. Here in Texas, we can actually carry guns in our car in the glove box away. And also, I believe having a concealed handgun permit gives me the training and the fingerprints and everything that you have to do to get one.
Put it up closer.
And I also believe that California has some messed up laws on gun control. And I wish you guys could have some of the laws that Texas has. Probably the reason why a lot of people from California are moving to Texas. And that's basically what I believe, is that you have to have the training to do it. And, you know, I'm sorry, I don't want my training coming from the school system because, let's face it, that's kind of messed up right now. And
Actually, though, having
So let's
training
pass it on
coming...
to here. Go ahead.
Excuse me, please. In this last half hour, 300,000 have been rounded up by our government, put in concentration camps, and the militia, well organized, has not yet been mentioned.
So how does that support the idea of a permit?
I do not know that that is anything that we need to be talking about, because we've wasted a lot of time talking about all this, and we
Well,
don't have the
let me tell
militia
you.
formed
Let me tell
that
you
we are
what-
allowed by the Constitution specifically.
What's your name?
Robert from
Robert,
Miami.
let me tell you why we're here this week in case you missed it. The reason why we're here is because this country's in trouble. And the reason why we're in trouble is that people can't debate these issues. We have a lack of knowledge, a lack of intelligence as to the original intent behind the right to bear arms, a lack of intelligence and a lack of education as to what it actually means, the historical influences leading up to the actual drafting and ratification of the Second Amendment. That's why we're here. This is the training ground to go back and start turning these laws upside down in these various states that don't allow individuals to exercise what is a fundamental, unalienable right to bear arms. That's why we're here, okay? So this is not a place where you were to come and I was going to massage your ego and say this is the way it is. because that's not how we're going to change these things. We've got to understand what the opponents are arguing, and the problem is that the vast majority of Americans think that CCW permits are okay. I have a problem with them. I absolutely have a problem with them. In Arizona, there was a period of time where you could carry open all you want, but if you wanted to drop that jacket over the top of the gun, I had to get a permit. Somebody tell me what the fundamental difference is between me carrying a gun concealed and putting my jacket over the top of it. It's still the same thing. I'm still armed with a deadly weapon. And I shouldn't have to go to the federal government or the state government to ask them permission to exercise what is my unalienable right, the right that I had at the time of my birth to defend myself. So all I'm suggesting as we banter a little bit here is understanding what the issue is, number one, and being able to talk about the issue intelligently, number two. Yes.
The right of the people.
Hold on,
The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
It's in the Constitution. We have the right.
Infringed.
Go ahead.
If we have the right to carry, in our Constitution, it says we have the right to bear arms and protect ourselves. If you're in a public establishment and they say, we don't want your guns, they have a right to do that. The government doesn't have a right to tell us where we can and cannot bring guns. But on our property, we can tell the person, please let me know if you have a gun, or please don't bring it in here. Now, same thing goes, I remember you were talking about, should felons be allowed to have guns? Well, if we have guns, they're gonna be afraid of us too, right? They're not gonna threaten us with a gun if they know we have one. And with the child molestation, if somebody is, well, one of those really bad people and they get out, well, we the people are responsible for telling everybody that they're here. The government has no right. We the people have that responsibility, and we cannot be lazy. We cannot let the government take control, because if we push that line, they're gonna do the carry permits, which I don't believe in. That's not right. I have the right to carry it, but you have the right to tell me not to take it to your house.
Very good. And I think that
Also,
I think this is an important issue to understand. A private entity can tell the general public we're not allowing firearms. But as we've talked about, how do you counter bad ideas? You counter them with good ideas, and maybe that means I'm not going to patronize those particular businesses, right? It's having a voice. I counter speech, as Thomas Jefferson said, with more speech, with more powerful ideas, with persuasive ideas. Let's go here with the last word.
I think it's important to notice, too, that every single mass murder type situation has happened in a gun-free zone. My sons and husband are military. They walk on a base with a gun. They go straight to the armory, and they check it in. There are not guns running around the base. Fort Hood was a sitting duck. That movie theater in Colorado was a gun-free zone. Virginia Tech was a gun-free zone. These people who are demented go where they know there won't be any challengers. And when they don't know what's on your person, they are cowards.
Very good. All right. Did you want to say quickly?
Real quick, backing up to the First Amendment, pornography, one. You want to talk about the First Amendment being able to destroy lives and destroy families, pornography. So if we're going to let the liberals have pornography and say, well, that's your right because it can't be infringed, it says it right there, but then Second Amendment, we go, oh no, I don't want to look like a weirdo because I want to let everybody have the right to keep and bear arms, then we're not standing on principles, we're selling out. And if I had been sitting in the Colorado theater, I don't know if I'd have stopped him, but I'd have had a better chance than anybody there. And I think you don't like welfare, you don't like somebody else smooching off of you, well, the cops don't have to protect me.
Very good. We've got a lot to cover. We're going to debate some more on a few other issues, but let's give these people a hand. Very good job. Absolutely. Can we get the PowerPoint up?
Shane, one of the things that this lady here, she just had a real quick comment, quickly.
Go ahead, Margaret.
One of the comments that was left unmentioned was that our founding fathers said that in this inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it also includes the right to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government. And if we have our weapons registered and they've got my name on their list, this tyrannical government is going to make sure they disarm the citizens of the United States first.
That's right.
And that's what kept the Japanese off the homeland. And they hit Pearl Harbor first because they said there was a gun underneath every bush on the mainland of the United States of America.
Very good, thank you. No, I mean, think about what was just said. This really brings together so nicely what we've been discussing all week. And that is, government is not necessarily to be trusted. So if government is not necessarily to be trusted, why in the world are we allowing the government to come in and say, yeah, go ahead and regulate our firearms? Thomas Jefferson said that the ultimate counter against a tyrannical government is arms. That was the very reason for the Second Amendment, is to ensure that the right of the people maintained that right. They kept that right so that the government couldn't come back and say, well, we're going to regulate here. No, that's the very entity we're protecting ourselves from. And yet we continue to give in. Can we go to the next slide? We got the next slide and the next one. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, we spent some time talking about us as people carrying firearms, possessing firearms, owning them. But what about this idea of a well-regulated militia? What is going on here? Doesn't this Second Amendment, I mean, I know it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, but it's also preceded by the statement, a well-regulated militia. Doesn't that mean that the government can at some point step in and at least regulate to a certain degree to ensure that there is that well-regulated militia, that you don't have crazies wandering the streets? What do you think about this? You're saying no. And why not?
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms relates to that, to the militia. The people are the militia.
The people are the militia. Okay, so if the people are the militia, that's fine. But it says well-regulated militia.
They're educated and they go through training. They know what they're doing.
So in other words, if you're not educated and you're not trained, the government can regulate. Well, did I misunderstand something?
No, it means that means that the free state needs to do that, not the government.
So if the people are not rising up as a well-regulated militia, a well-educated militia, a well-trained militia, in order to protect the free state, maintain the free state, government can come in and say, you guys, you crazies over here, you three people, you don't look like you got this down, right? You can't shoot the side of a barn. So guess what? We're going to step in and say, sorry, you can't do this. Yes.
The military. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's the military to me. It means all the Army, Navy. They're supposed to secure the free state, but at the same time, the people have a right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So it's like everyone is that.
So
to
wait
me, that's
a second.
what it means.
So she's saying the militia has something to do with the military. No. How does that relate then to the right of the people to keep and bear arms? Why is this in the same sentence if it pertains to the military? Yes, the guy back there who can't contain himself.
When the Constitution was written, a well-regulated militia was the people. It was men ages 18 to 46, and that they met, I believe it was once a week for target training, for practice. That is what they mean by a well-regulated militia, is the people itself. It's us.
But if the founders wanted to ensure that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, why didn't they just write, Congress shall make no law abridging the people's right to keep and bear arms? Why did they throw up well-regulated militia?
Because it was expected that if any other nation were to invade us and our army wasn't there to do it, to defend ourselves, that the people would do it.
So what if the people are not well-regulated? They're not uniform in the exercise of this fundamental right. Doesn't this seem to say that if you're not, then we've got a problem? aren't they advocating the people coming together, training together, educating themselves together? And I've got one crazy guy over here who's doing his own thing.
Don't we do that though?
Wait, I can't hear you.
Don't we do that though? Don't you go to the range? Don't you practice? Don't you use your weapons that you own?
Maybe, but I know a lot of people.
I know I do.
I know a lot of people who possess firearms who've never shot them. I just taught a live fire course 3 weeks ago in the Phoenix area. I had about 40 people in the class, and about 15 of them had never fired a gun before. Hold on. Did they bring a gun to the course? Yes, it was their gun. They brought a gun. They'd never fired the thing before.
That's a problem.
That is a problem. So are they a part of the well-regulated militia?
Yes, they are. They're supposed to be.
Well, I didn't say they're supposed to be. I said, are they? Because if they're not, can we make the argument that the Second Amendment allows some regulation? What do you think?
You're too good at this.
A well-regulated militia implies regulation. That's one group. That's the police, that's the military, whatever. They have rules and regulations and training and all of that to secure, to provide for the security of a free state. But the right of the people, which is us, to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So it's two things.
The militia pertains to the military.
The militia pertains to regulated people that are there to protect the state. That's my take.
So the Second Amendment reads like this: a well-regulated militia being necessary to secure the free state. Whoa, but the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Yes. Two different things.
Huh. What do you think about this? Can we go back to the green shirt?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to what you said on the Founding Fathers. At the time, there was no national army. The militia was the people, and yes, they were well trained. Just look at the grammar. There's a comma. It's the same sentence. The militia applies to the people. The people and the militia are the same thing. So in this case, a well-regulated militia is a self-regulated militia. It's not regulated by the government. It doesn't reference the Army or the Navy or anything else like that. Like you said, Shane, the historical context of this is that at the time, those organizations hadn't been set up. Every city was protected by the people, and that's why they regulated themselves to get out and train.
Right. And as you look back at the term well-regulated, that was very well said. Well-regulated pertained to functioning. It had nothing to do with regulation. It had to do everything to do with functioning. Can we get the next slide? Let's look at a couple quotes by the people who wrote this thing. Go to the next one. Next. And next. I ask, who are the militia? This is George Mason. They consist now of the whole people. Next. That said, Constitution shall never be construed to authorize Congress to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms. That's Samuel Adams. Next. That great object is that every man be armed. Everyone who is able may have a gun. Patrick Henry. Right? So who is our militia? It is the people. And I'm going to show you something in a moment that's very powerful to show you what this sentence actually means and what they were ultimately getting at. Yes? Hold on one second here.
Obviously, with Colorado, you saw an example of an individual using arms for totally evil purposes. However, about a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember the city, but in Florida, there was a robbery going on with two individuals ripping off an internet cafe. They had shotguns. They were threatening to kill people. Unless they give over money, and they might have killed them regardless. One 71-year-old man had a gun, shot both of them, and basically chased them out of the cafe. And those two people were apprehended. Another situation yesterday in Utah. It was interesting in terms of the example Glenn Beck gave. I believe it was either in Switzerland or in Sweden regarding the machete individual. in Utah yesterday, a man bought a knife from the shop and used that knife to kill one individual, and he was about to kill other people until one individual who had a gun killed him, saving everybody in the store. Right. What you see there are examples of individuals who use their arms in a responsible way, not only for themselves, but to help protect their fellow individuals. Now, what I want to ask, maybe this is a subject later on down the line, so please let me know ahead of time. Are these two individuals, and this is what I'm concerned about, are they in danger of paying for their actions, even though they're responsible? In my opinion, I thought they did the right thing. Yeah. Are they in danger legally of paying for their actions, even though they did it for the right intentions?
Yeah, you know, and that's a great question, and what we need to look is at the state law. What is the state law? And as I outline some things for you, I'm going to outline some things that we do in Arizona and how things are done. I really think Arizona is a model state when it comes to firearms. In that sort of situation, let me just give you the lowdown. When an individual in Arizona, and I think in most states, is confronted with deadly force, he may respond with deadly force. When an individual is confronted with physical force, he may respond with physical force. We even have crime prevention statutes in Arizona. If you see someone committed an armed robbery, an aggravated assault with a dangerous instrument or a deadly weapon, child molestation, sex assault, arson of a residential structure, you may shoot the individual to stop them from committing that crime. Those are crime prevention statutes on the books. Now you deal with the civil issue, right? You have the civil issue now. Hey, well, I'm justified. Now he's coming after me civilly. In Arizona, we have a law in the books that says if you are deemed justified in your actions, you cannot be sued civilly. Unfortunately, you have many states that still allow for civil action to be taken. And that's why this is so important that we go back, we understand what the argument is. Because the argument that is being made by Americans that don't understand the things we're talking about is this. There's this idea that the Second Amendment talks about a collective right, a well-regulated militia, therefore it must be a collective right. Not one writing, commit this to memory, not one writing during the founding era by any of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence or any of the individuals that signed the Constitution or any of the individuals, 3 of them, that wrote the Federalist Papers, never was it ever advocated that this right was a collective right. It was always advocated as an individual right. Now, I think if we were to go back in time, we were to talk a little bit with George Mason and James Madison, I think seeing what we are experiencing today, they would have changed the wording. They absolutely would have changed the wording. But even as it's structured here, it still makes sense and it still protects the individual right. And I'm going to show you that here in a moment. Can we go to the next slide? Take a look at this. This sentence is something, because remember, out at the college campus where I teach, I get a lot of kids coming through that say, yeah, government should be regulating. And so we'll have the debate much like we're having here today. And then I will throw this sentence up on the board. It says, a well-informed electorate being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to read and write shall not be infringed. See, when you read this sentence, grammatically it's the same thing as the Second Amendment, but it carries different meaning. It makes sense now to us. What, do I only have the right to read if I'm involved with a well-educated electorate? Do I only have the right to write if I'm associated with a well-educated electorate? Do I only have the right to print something that I think or that I wish or that I say if I'm a part of a well-regulated electorate or a well-educated electorate? Absolutely not. See, what the Second Amendment is doing is this is what we want to foster. It's the purposive clause. It's outlining the purpose of the Second Amendment. This is sort of the preamble, if you will, just like in this sentence. It's the preamble. It's saying this is the sort of environment we want to foster in order that an individual will do this. He will read and write because we want to foster a well-educated electorate. We want people to keep and bear arms because we want to foster a well-regulated militia in order to secure the free state, because we lived through tyranny. We lived through it. And as a result of living through it, we understand that the only way we can defend against it is to have a well-regulated, educated, informed, trained people. That's what he's getting at here. So the next time you're involved in a debate, memorize this. Memorize this, because if there are English teachers in the house, you probably could have taught this better than I can. And you'd probably say, it is. Grammatically, it's identical. But see, what we did is for over 200 years, the U.S. Supreme Court said this: the people do have a right to keep and bear arms, but they only have a right to keep and bear arms if they're a part of a well-regulated militia. And they define well-regulated militia as uniform and organized. Do you realize that it wasn't until 2008, where the Supreme Court finally said, yeah, it's a fundamental right of the people to keep and bear arms, and it has nothing to do with the militia? Do you realize this? We've been living all of this time where the Supreme Court has said only if you're affiliated with a well-regulated militia. In 2010, the Chicago v. McDonald case, the U.S. Supreme Court finally said, well, not only at the federal level do you have a right to keep and bear arms, at the state level you have that right as well. See, what many people don't understand is the significance of that case. Let me just give you a little history lesson here for just a moment. Do you realize that when the U.S. Constitution was written, it only applied to the federal government? The U.S. Constitution did not apply to the states. So that's why you had some states that had state-established religions. You had states that were enacting laws that infringed on speech, on the free exercise of religion, on the right to keep and bear arms. You had that. And why? Because this Constitution didn't apply to the states. It only restricted the action of the federal government. Well, then the 14th Amendment in 1868 comes along. And what do they say? Well, there's this due process clause in there, and the original intent was now to apply the Bill of Rights to the states, because there was a lot of things going on in various states where they continued to infringe on the fundamental rights of the people. And so they amend the Constitution to say, not only does the Constitution apply to the federal government, it now is going to apply to the states. Well, the Supreme Court gets this, and they disagree. They said that we don't believe that's what's going on here, and that's not the way we read the 14th Amendment, but we'll make a deal with you. As various cases are presented to us, we will decide which of those rights should apply to the states and which should not. And so they would ask the question, is this fundamental to human liberty? And if the answer was yes, the Supreme Court was saying it applies to the states. If the answer was no, they were saying, no, it doesn't apply to the states. So now, watch this. Freedom of speech, is that fundamental to human liberty? Yes. Absolutely, it applies to all 50 states. The right to the freedom of the press, fundamental to human liberty? Yes, applies to the states. The freedom of assembly, right, fundamental to human liberty? Applies to the states. In other words, the states cannot enact a law that infringes on that right any longer. The right to petition the government for redress of grievances, fundamental to human liberty? Absolutely applies to the states. You have to give your citizens free access to your state courts. The right to keep and bear arms, fundamental to human liberty? Yes. Not until 2010, according to the U.S. Supreme Court. So from 1868 to 2010, the fundamental right to keep and bear arms did not apply to the states. And so you ask yourself, well, why did Arizona and all these other states do the things they were doing? They were simply offering more protection to their citizens than, according to the Supreme Court, the Constitution actually mandated. So you had a state, our Constitution in Arizona says you have the right to keep and bear arms. It protects that right. So the Supreme Court saying, well, it offers more protection to the people than we're mandating under the Constitution. Suddenly 2010 comes around, Chicago v. McDonald, and the U.S. Supreme Court finally says, fundamental right to bear arms. And so this is how this came about. This is monumental. Finally, they get it right. So now the battle, those of you from Illinois and those of you from those states that impose, you guys are in a battleground. Because you have the mayor of Chicago who says, I don't care what the Supreme Court says, I'm imposing more regulations. Guess what? One of the solutions to this problem, well, there's several of them. Number one, we need to become well educated. We need to understand the things we've been discussing all week. We need to understand that we have rights and that our voice matters, and we need to engage in relentless litigation. I know oftentimes we say, oh, these lawyers, we live in a litigious society. Well, unfortunately, this is part of the solution. At this point in time, you have a government that is relentless in its attack on freedom, where you have to have freedom fighters stand up. We have the Goldwater Institute in Arizona. They're phenomenal. These guys are constantly going after government action. I mean, it's constant. It's boom, boom, boom. They're going after the government saying, you're not going to infringe on the rights of the people. Relentless litigation is one of the solutions. Next, so that is a great, memorize this. Memorize this. Yes, go to the next one. There you go, DC v. Heller in 2008, and then Chicago v. McDonald in 2010. Next. Are we really safer with guns? Now, let's have one more debate, and then I'm going to show you some things with these firearms. That's going to be a lot of fun. So, you remember the shooting down in Tucson that happened with Gabrielle Giffords, Jared Loeffner. Paul Babu is a sheriff in Arizona, and he and I were asked to be on a radio show shortly after, about a month after the shooting. And the issue was this: a caller calls in and says, hey, I want to talk about the fact that he had a 30-round magazine. There's no reason for him to have a 30-round magazine. Let's regulate. Let's be reasonable here. There's no reason for a person, at least so says the caller, to have a 30-round magazine. So why don't we do something different? Let's make it more difficult to access certain firearms, but in this case, let's make it more difficult to access certain capacity